Greetings, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Addis Dialogue. Ethiopia has successfully hosted the 37th AU Summit, showing the usual cordial hospitality to the participants coming from Africa and beyond. While this happened, there were some allegations coming from the Somali president. These and other issues along that line will be our discussion points, and my guest today is Professor Brook Hailu Beshah, former senior diplomat, political scientist, African politics, and AU analyst and president of the newly formed Ethiopian Diplomats Association. And I'm your host, Shifara Olago. Do stay with us. Professor, thank you so much. So good to see you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Good to be with you once again.
Ethiopia has successfully hosted the 37th AU Summit, showing the usual, cordial hospitality to the participants. So how do you describe the ways that Ethiopia handled when it comes to, accepting and welcoming the participants of the AU Summit?
Thank you. Well, Ethiopia is really, for the last 60 plus years, is used to hosting multilateral conferences, meetings, as well as bilateral meetings. It goes without saying that since 1963 OAU, in every year, there is a heads of state and government summit or ministerial summits at the time OAU, as well as extraordinary conferences sometimes were held. So hosting a summit comprising of 50 plus, to be exact, 54 member countries, with all their entourage, the VIP, the motorcade, their physical security, their well-being, good high standard hotels that should be available in keeping with to honor them and their standards. All this, Ethiopia is very used to that. And coming to the 37th African Heads of State and Government Summit, without a hitch, I would say. The conference was concluded, and literally all leaders of Africa have gone back to their homes, and the meeting was successfully concluded, I would say.
Thank you, Professor. So talking about the summit, which has recently concluded, what are the main deliberations and the decisions made, the salient points that were reached that you've observed?
The agenda items are very long. To be honest, very numerous. Due to lack of time, I will only dwell on, I would say, the major ones, which I will share with you. The 37th Summit meeting was loaded with agendas. Every other year, I would say, or every year, the Secretariat of the African Union, the permanent representatives of the African Union, the ambassadors, they select a topic to be highlighted on. This year, they chose the topic of education. Right. So my first comment is regarding education. This year, education was the number one item, or the focal interest topic that was discussed. And the way it was presented was wonderful in that it shows us to what extent phenomena in society, activities in society, agriculture, education, health, political processes, political conflicts, wars and matters of peace and war and the like are interconnected. So there's a nexus. So education was the focus, and what was deliberated is the following. In conflict areas, or rather specifically in countries riddled with conflict, like say the Sudan, hundreds, if not thousands of schools have been closed. And guess what, Mr. Shifara? All this due to the what? Lack of peace and security. So students are not going to school. Students are staying home, very idle. So there will be a gap of the school system. So that was the topic. So what they were trying to do was that they were trying to showcase, the consequences of not having peace. It also hurts little kids, elementary, middle, and high school students. It disrupts life. It even disrupts agriculture. Farmers cannot till the land. And there were other conflict areas like in the Sahel region, Central African Republic, still there is conflict going on. DRC, Eastern DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, at the border with Rwanda, especially, and the like. It seems Africa is reliving, quote unquote, I would say, the mid-1960s, late 60s, and the 1970s, and to some extent the 1980s, where the rule rather than the exception was military governments were everywhere, taking over power. Here again, under the name of under the name of saving the nation, and putting aside constitutional rule, putting aside constitutionally elected leaders and leadership, and putting the country, suspending the constitution and the like. So now a case in point here is in the Sahel in West Africa. Guinea, military took over, Mali took over, Burkina Faso, Niger, and even in Gabon. So what I'm trying to underline is the fact that the African Union, under the new charter, when it was established, 2001, 2002, at that period, what the African leaders at the time agreed was no military government or no group of people, either an individual or a group of people who had assumed state power unconstitutionally, going against the rule of the country, suspend the constitution, will never be allowed to participate directly or indirectly in AU meetings. That's the newest development in the African continent. Hence, this led consequently to the suspension of a number of countries, like Mali, like Guinea, like Burkina Faso, and etc. Because under the new charter, only by the will and consent of their own people, leaders of such kinds, under a democratically elected, just and fair election, are only allowed to participate, represent their people, because each delegation comes and says, we represent the people, we speak on behalf of the people. So that is a new thing. Hence, what we have is around 4 or 5 countries in the 37th summit meeting were suspended. So yes, we have 54 countries, but literally 48 or 49 countries were represented in the meeting of a few days ago. So that's the newest development. So peace and security. How can we bring about peace and security? And who takes the helm in doing that? The African Union has the Peace and Security Council. It is the one that will navigate and pilot, I would say, and lead the peace and security efforts. In addition, it reports to the gathering, and behind closed doors, the situation in the countries that I cited were discussed behind closed doors, away from the press eyes, and they strategized the leadership how to bring about peace and the like. Yes. I'll take the case of Gabon. Okay. Gabon has become, I would say, a hope to those countries in conflict which has taken power unconstitutionally. In the case of Gabon, the regime, the group that took over power, agreed that in April 2024, that's in less than 2 months' time, yes, a national dialogue will be held by all stakeholders in Gabon. That's at least a hope.
So there is hope.
There is hope. Others should follow Gabon in a way. And then already a schedule has been underlined that in December 2024, after 9 or 10 months, a free election was going to be held. Okay. That's what democratically elected African nations want to see. For those people who say that the African Union is toothless, I would humbly, respectively disagree. Yes, there are hiccups here and there over so many issues, but at least we should appreciate the effort of the African Union to nudge and to gently pressure those African member countries that go unconstitutionally to come back to respect the will of the people. Yes. So that's where we are now. So that was a big agenda discussed under the 37th summit.
This AU summit has seen many developments, good signs, this great hospitality from Ethiopia. However, there are also some kind of hiccups, if you will, that happened, such as the allegation by the Somali government, and many say that this is really belligerent and this should never have happened in the first place. What have you made out of that?
It's a bit really off. It's a bit odd. Before I come to that, if you allow me, so many issues has been discussed, as I have said, and that's one issue that fascinates me, and that all of Africa should focus on, and that is, quote unquote, the new concept of food sovereignty. You know, Africa, a rich continent, strategic minerals, oil, gas, even fertile land, virgin land, most African states are, Mr. Schiffer, unable to feed themselves.
Yes.
Food production is low. By the way, lack of peace and security would affect, just like the health system, just like the education system, it affects the farmers from tilling the land. So what we have now is this effort, coordinated effort of, you know, how Africans can use, you know, with basic, better kind of farming techniques, as well as, you know, not depending outside the outside world. And all of us know the impact of the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, between the two countries. Both of them are the top wheat producing countries. And look, now in Nigeria, food prices are going up, a giant country in Africa, in so many African countries. So this means that these are, from my point of view, sort of mines that are in the ground that are going to explode most probably in the coming weeks and months. People going out on the street asking for bread and this and that.
Like a time bomb.
Time bomb. So that is the focus. So food sovereignty should be the goal of each African country. To do that, what do African nations need? A strong and committed leadership. So the question of leadership is also key to the success or the failure of African nations. So food security, classical, best example, recent example is Ethiopia. In a span of 2.5 years, less than, I would say 3 years, the production of food items, especially wheat, summer wheat we call it, has gone up tremendously, and that has put Ethiopia in a very, very strong position, even enabling it to export food to the outside world. Of course, we still have some isolated areas in the north, especially, and other places where there is food deficiency areas, as well as drought conditions are still there. But overall, what we need to see and hope is to see conditions like Ethiopia, where other African countries follow this example and try to be food sufficient. Without securing that, the whole thing might collapse in other countries. Now, back to your question of Somalia. Yes, it was a very, very unfortunate incident, I would say. The Somali president was in Ethiopia. He was received with all the dignity and respect of the diplomatic decorum and order and procedures. There was some kind of a conflict. The way he presented it was that he and his, guards were prevented from entering the conference hall. And as a former diplomat, what I would like to underline are, from the theoretical point and from the reality point of view, how things are done in a very brief way. Whether it's United Nations conference in New York, or in Geneva, or in Washington, D.C., or in Ethiopia, as the seat of African Union, the Ethiopian government is responsible and accountable, by the way, for the security of the heads of state dignitaries, plus for their physical well-being. From the moment they enter the Ethiopian airspace until they depart flying away from Bole International Airport. So this is a must. It is expected from Ethiopia, even by international law, African standards as well, that their physical well-being should be kept. Now, from the practical point of view, the guards of member countries are not allowed to get into the conference. This is ridiculous. One. Secondly, they shouldn't refuse to be searched, because they come with weapons, because they have to protect the leaders. But in conference halls, that's a place where they can argue bitterly. Say rival countries might argue. So that's why the press is sent out, by the way, so that they can, without any pressure, media pressure and everything, they argue among themselves to find a solution. And if weapons are allowed, you'll never know what will happen. Because when emotions are high, one delegation, the one guard might want to attempt this and that on the life of the other president or prime minister. So it is not safe and it's not secure. If the Ethiopian government allows that, by the way, it is wrong.
That would have been another story.
That's another story. The standard is going to be low, and believe me, other countries would complain because when the government of Ethiopia is lax, when it is just soft or weak. So I think it was a proper procedure to prevent the guards from entering in. Now, what we have to further see it from another angle, and that is why, of all places, does the president chose this incident?
Yes, why did he resort to such a course of action?
It is sad. It's going to be speculation, I know, but in a very rational way or calculated way. What we can say is that maybe he's trying to use this incident to spark conflicts, more conflicts, so that the way he sees it, the attentions of the press would fall on him. Because before coming to Addis, and since he's coming to Addis, a press release was, from his government was released, a press release, criticizing Ethiopia bitterly, that Ethiopia had signed a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with Somaliland, and the Somali leader has bitterly attacked left and right Ethiopia. He has gone to a number of countries, among others to Al-Qahira, to Cairo, Egypt, seeking the support of the Egyptian government, as well as seeking the support of the Islamic organization, as you know, hoping that they will support him. But here is the deal, as one says in America, and that is what we shouldn't always overlook, is the fact that heads of state, when they represent their country, they should be in good standing. The do's and don'ts protocol should be, etiquette also should be accepted, okay? And also from the host country should be very careful and cautious, because here we are involved not only with one head of state, but more than 34 presidents, not counting the prime ministers that were in Addis.
Thanks so much for that idea. As you know, Ethiopia and Somalia have had long-standing friendship and bilateral relationship, and that has spanned years, of course. So how should the relationship continue in the future, despite the statements coming from the president?
At the moment, it seems it's a bit cold. And by the way, we shouldn't forget that some short videos are coming out from the closed session, when the Somali president was speaking a minute or two. And also another video has come out, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, also responding. What we can deduct from the two leaders is the following. The Somalia is insisting that Ethiopia should not, that it has annulled the MOU, Somalia is one country, etc., etc. From the Ethiopian point of view, the Prime Minister had in a very clear terms underlined the fact that Ethiopia is ready to talk to the President of Somalia, even had restored or had even asked the support of as an elder brother leadership of the President of Djibouti, as well as the President of Kenya, to come closer, and also without no inhibition to talk about the reality, But that was refused, turned down by the Somali government, as you know. So that had prevented, the AU as well as the neighboring countries from intervening and bringing the two sides together. So it is still a stalemate, I would say. Regarding Somalia, the two are brotherly people. We cannot, separate them two. We have Somali people here and Somali people there, as you know. We have also, Ethiopia is really engaged, assisting Somalia stand on its own 2 feet. This is a fact. When you talk about AMISOM, there are a number of countries, peacekeepers. Ever since it started in 2007, the European calendar, I would say Ethiopia's contribution is decisive. I will not say it's a total, but it is decisive. Why? Because thousands of Ethiopian troops have died protecting Somalia, protect Somalia from its collapse, protecting Somalia as a failed state. That was the category given to it, trying to save and assist Somalia. Even to this day, Ethiopian troops are there. So it will hamper them. I'm saying, we don't know, but just sort of in a very way, let's say if the Ethiopian government say decides to pull out from Somalia, imagine, Mr. Shafarao, the consequences to peace and security and even to the survival of the federal government in Mogadishu itself. Do that make sense? So, I mean, Ethiopia is there assisting because Ethiopia feels obliged to assist Somalia. We feel obliged also to assist the Sudan throughout the neighborhood. Ethiopia is committed. And I wish there is an understanding of the Somali leadership in Mogadishu, the desire and goal of the Ethiopian government and the people who behind it, and that is, as a landlocked, largest populous country in the world, looking for partners to have access to the sea. And the very fact that Somaliland de facto is a sovereign country, you know, de facto, if not de jure, 33 years is an independent country. They have their own parliaments, they have their own free elections, they have their own vibrant multi-party system. The parties fight it out, they have a vibrant press. This is the former United Kingdom protectorate. There is a difference between a colony and a protectorate. Mogadishu was established, the Italians established a colony several years after the British had entered into an agreement with the Yisak or the Isaac clans of Somaliland to be their protectorate. Okay? Yes. So this is a 37-year-old, I would say, legal body where, you know, is acting in all terms as a sovereign country. You know, and by the way, there are a number of European countries that have intersections. They have sent ambassadors. A case in point is Denmark, United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Ethiopia as well, and scores of Western countries have intersections. And this itself tells you that the ice has to be broken. So Somaliland by itself is a political entity. Negotiating and talking Mogadishu with Hargeisa might be the ultimate solution for the brotherly people between Somaliland and Somalia. And one last point is the pain of Ethiopia should feel all neighboring countries, whether it's Eritrea, Djibouti, Somaliland, Kenya. They should feel the pain of Ethiopia. What do I mean pain? The pain of Ethiopia is that a giant country like Ethiopia, economically, Ethiopia is now at the top in comparison with all Horn countries, most populous. In 10, 15 years' time, we're going to be 150 million. And then we're going to double up in 25 years or something. And a confined political entity, you know, implosion or explosion, you know, there would be some political consequences for the entire region. Ethiopia is the anchor. If there is no peace and security in Ethiopia, definitely it will involve Somaliland, it will involve Somalia, Eritrea, and all neighboring Kenya and everything. Therefore, I think in good brotherly spirit, we live in a globalized world. The world is becoming smaller and smaller as we speak, symbolically. Enough 3,300 kilometers of access to the sea has Somalia. And what is Ethiopia from the Somaliland part has asked is, you know, 20 kilometers. That is vital, like a corridor for import and export, and eventually in the future, the military naval forces, because Ethiopia can play also a military role securing the stability of the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, Bab el-Mandeb area. And I think Somalia should take in good spirit and talk in Ethiopia directly. And I think the Ethiopian leadership is ready to talk to the Mogadishu government, whether in Mogadishu itself, or in neutral country like Djibouti, or in Nairobi, or even in Addis, where our Somali brothers are always welcome.
Professor, former senior diplomat, political scientist, thank you so much for your ideas.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you as well for having been with us so far. Until I see you next time with yet another program, it's a bye-bye from me.